Welcome back to the big picture.
Tuesday,
Yes,
8:58.
it is. Hello, Colin. How's your morning going?
It's been a morning.
Let's talk about your cufflinks really quick. What's going on?
Tracy forgot her coffee at home. I forgot my cufflinks, so my sleeves were held together all morning long with paper clips.
That's creative.
It was, overcoming adversity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we got it done. But you know what? Great. We got through the morning, but otherwise, it's been a pretty good morning.
Good.
Yeah, anticipating storms for tomorrow. We do have that weather alert in effect
we
for
have
tomorrow.
Justin Gertz coming on later in the show to talk to us more about that. But there's a lot happening today, actually. We have Lacey Crisp joining us in just a couple minutes. She sat down exclusively with Andy Wilson, who is the new Ohio Attorney General. He replaced Dave Yost. So she had an exclusive conversation with him, and it's really good. We're going to play some sound bites from that and talk to her about that. Also, we have Senator Jon Husted joining us. We're talking about a new Senate bill he's introducing.
Got some legislation to reform foster care.
Yeah, it's called the Connect Act. So he was obviously a foster care child, so he has a deep personal relationship to that whole topic. So we'll talk to him about that. And then Governor Mike DeWine, he's having a press conference at 9:30 this morning, and no one officially knows what it's about. So we're going to find out in real time with you live at 9:30. And then we also have the Franklin Park Conservatory coming on to talk about their economic impact on Central Ohio. And I mean, their economic impact's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's going to be a good conversation as well. So a lot to get to today.
All right, so we want to bring in Lacey Crisp. Lacey,
Hi.
you sat down with the now, I guess, interim AG, Andy Wilson.
He is the Attorney
He's
General.
the Attorney General.
He's the 52nd Attorney General for the state of Ohio.
Yeah. So talk to us a little about this conversation. What, for his role in that office, what are his goals right now?
Well, so for anyone who hasn't met Andy Wilson, he's like the Energizer Bunny. He is super energetic. When you listen to him talk, I think it motivates you. He's just one of those people who is, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to tell you about it. Let's just go do it. And so he told me that, from day one, he hit the ground running. And I know right before Attorney General Dave Yost left office, I also sat down with him, and he looked back on his career. And he had told me at that time that he had already had conversations with Wilson about these are the things that are in the works. Here's what you need to know. And I know Attorney General Yost was very proud of his work on the HB6 trials. And that's one thing that Andy Wilson is now picking up. He said he's already met with those trial teams a couple of times to make sure that their strategy is on point so that there's not another hung jury, so that they can get a guilty verdict on this next go around. I also asked him about the Pike County cases because that's something that he was a special prosecutor on. And here we are 10 years later, and Billy Wagner still has not gone to trial. And he said that is something that he's still following very closely, and that he is going to see that to fruition.
And you also talked to him about jury fatigue.
So I asked him about how the state of Ohio handles officer-involved murder cases, because here in Franklin County, I personally have covered 6 in the last 5 years. And we have another one pending with Ricky Anderson, a Columbus police officer. And that has been pushed down the road because we've had so many of these trials just in the last couple of years. We just finished up with Jason Meade. We had Coy and Grubb not long ago. And so you have to take from such a small jury pool because of you can't have too much media publicity. The jurors can't know too much about the trial or have already formed an opinion. So when you have a saturation of all these trials, I asked him if there's something that we need to be doing differently, if these cases need to be handled differently. And he said that he would be open for the legislature to kind of take a look at things like jury instructions and how these cases are handled. But he also said, especially when we're talking about the Pike County case and the Billy Wagner case, that he thinks these cases should be tried in the area in which they happen. He said it's the same culture, same mindset. You want the people of like mind to decide your peers.
All right, let's take a listen at kind of what he had to say about that.
When we talk about jury fatigue here in Franklin County in the last 5 years, we've had 6 murder trials for police officers. We have another one that's on hold. What do you hope happens there? Because I think Mark and Caitlin, the defense attorneys, have kind of pushed it off because there's so much jury fatigue because of these officer-involved trials.
Look, the BCI has put together their officer-involved investigation unit. They are doing a lot of work in turning these cases around. They're difficult cases. You know, our officers are out there every day putting their lives on the line to keep us safe. We put them in incredibly difficult situations where they had to make split-second decisions of life or death. So it's very difficult in dealing with these cases. They take a lot of resources, take a lot of effort, and you know we'll just each case has to be judged on individual merits though and investigated on its individual facts. So we need to make sure we're doing thorough investigations, and ultimately we need to make sure again that our law enforcement officers who are out there in these tough situations feel supported.
Yeah. So you also talked to him just about he's not going to be in this position for very long, correct?
Right. Yeah, 7 months.
So why did he want to do this?
You know, I asked him that because I think it's interesting, because who would want to go into a role that he
Right.
he can't run? It's already too late for him,
Yeah.
you know, to put his name in. And he said he wants the challenge. He's not someone who can sit idle, and he loved his time at the Department of Public Safety, and he said he was ready for the challenge. He said he's already learned so much, and I asked him, he said, so what happens after 7 months? He said, I don't know. I'm looking at the next 7 months as the challenge and learning and doing the best that I can for the state and for the people, and we'll figure it out when it comes.
Why did you decide to take this job?
So listen, I loved public safety. I loved my time at public safety, working with the patrol, working with law enforcement. I saw this as an opportunity really to take on a new challenge and move the needle.
Well, we wish him luck. I mean,
Because
7
that's
months,
7 months. It's
not a lot of time.
It's a short period of time, and you know, I guess in the grand scheme, he could end up having that position again. But we are looking at major turnover, regardless, because Governor DeWine's administration is done. He's term limited, so he's out, and whomever becomes the next governor of Ohio basically gets to pick their entire slate of people to do that. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Other than that,
Yeah.
coming up, there's a few things that you've got kind of on your radar. We've got the Meade resentencing coming up.
Yeah.
Now that we've completed the second trial. What are we looking at when it comes to that? Because we know what the prosecution's asking for. We know what Meade's defense is saying.
So what's interesting about it is that was actually supposed to happen today, and it was pushed back by 2 weeks. And the discussion is because the prosecutors, the special prosecutors in the case, Merkel and Schroyer, have not made the decision whether they want to retry Meade a third time on the murder charge. Now, we know he was found guilty on one of the charges, but the jury actually found that they were hung on the murder charge.
Yeah.
And this was the second trial.
Right.
So they haven't decided if they want to try him a third time on that one charge. And so they push back sentencing because they don't want to sentence him on one charge with having that other one just kind of dangling out there. So they want to make that decision before they have sentencing. And so we kind of have to wait and see. You know, I've been in touch with the prosecutor's office, with the special prosecutors. And from every indication that I have gotten, they truly have not decided yet. And Meade is being held at the Franklin County Jail while all this is kind of being played out behind the scenes.
Right. And we talk, and you know, when we mentioned jury fatigue, and especially in that conversation with Andy Wilson, there were conversations about why wasn't that one moved out of Franklin County. We haven't moved a lot of cases, in my time here, out of Franklin County, these, you know, high profile cases. We haven't moved them to a Cleveland or a Cincinnati or even Dayton. What has been some of the reasoning behind that? I know that's come up, especially following that verdict just a couple weeks ago.
Right. Well, the defense attorneys, Mark Collins and Caitlin Stevens, have represented almost every single officer in these murder trials, and they have advocated for a change of venue in every single one of these trials, and it's been denied every single time. And the thought is, as A.G. Wilson said, you want your peers to make that decision. You have to prove that it would be unable for you to seat a jury here before a judge would be willing to move it. The only case that comes to my mind off the top of my head is the Pike County case
Right.
in Billy Wagner. They have agreed on a change of venue, or the judge decided to change of venue, but now that's being held up by the higher courts. So
Yeah.
we still don't know where that's even going to be held.
Right, because when I was in
that's been
Iowa, we
going on
moved.
since 2016.
Yeah.
When I worked in Iowa, we moved everything. Everything ended up in Davenport. Everything ended up in the Quad Cities. You could just guarantee if it was a big case, it was either
Well, that's where the
going
people
to
are.
Yeah, I was going to Davenport Davenport was going to Sioux City. You were driving all the way to Nebraska.
Different states.
But yeah, it's kind of interesting how it all handles. Also, the other thing going on today, there's a news conference involving the
Firehouse.
Columbus Division of Fire.
Yeah.
And this has been an ongoing discussion about one, conditions of the firehouses, but also equipment that they're working with. Obviously, there's a Facebook page that has gone through and posted some of the conditions at these firehouses. We also saw, was it the roof at 18?
Yeah, collapsed.
Yes,
on
collapsed.
Cleveland Avenue. Mhm.
Right.
It was
so-
a partial collapse where we actually saw a video that was sent to me of it caving in, and you can just see. I mean, fortunately, no one was using that bunk room at the time. Otherwise, that could have been pretty catastrophic.
Right.
So what are we expecting to hear out of this newser today?
So this is the first news station to be built in several years. Now, Mayor Ginther, while he was on city council and as mayor, has renovated a handful of stations, but this is really the first brand new station in quite a long time. The big question for this fire station is how are they going to staff it? Because they haven't set aside a dedicated number of firefighters for this house, and that's kind of one of the big things in the fire service is you hear it's the family, and you've got to work together. You've got to know what you're going to do, what next move you're going to do to be able to do things safely, especially when you're going into a burning fire and trying to save lives. And so they're staffing it with overtime because the mayor and city council only allotted for one class this coming year, and that class doesn't even start till December. So while they're losing through attrition and retirement about 80 to 100 firefighters a year, they're only going to gain about 40 this year. But again, that class doesn't even start till December. So in the meantime, it's just overtime staffing for this brand new fire station.
Yeah, so because it's a gap until we get to that point.
It is.
Yeah. So where is this new fire station actually located, though?
So it's close to New Albany. It's
Yeah.
east corner of the city, where obviously we have rapid growth. It's an area that needs it, but I've done several stories on those deserts within the city that don't have fire stations, and especially when you think of like on the far west side, Franklin Township lost a fire station due to their financial situation, and so Firehouse 17 and 26 on the west side kind of have to pick up where that other fire station in Franklin Township would have carried the load, and so there's a big desert on that side as well. But as of right now, there are no new fire stations in the works after this is announced.
Right, because you're talking about those fire stations there that are having to pick up that load from Franklin Township. One of the closest is that one that's out there like on Hilliard Rome Road across from the Menards.
Yeah, it's Station 26.
Station 26,
Yeah.
and that's, it's a several mile drive into good portions of Franklin Township over there that aren't covered by the main station.
And it's a busy area.
It is, and it's also seen a lot of new housing developments as well, as that debate over annexation and who belongs to Columbus and who doesn't.
That's right.
Continues.
And who gets the tax dollars.
Right. That is what it all comes down to is who gets that and where it's being paid for.
All right, Lacey, thank you so much
Thank
for coming
you.
on today. We'll look forward to your reporting later tonight on 10 TV. Coming up next, we have Senator Jon Husted joining us, and we're talking about the Connect Act. So stick with us. We'll be back in 2 minutes. back to The Big Picture. It is 9:13 on your Tuesday morning, and we have a very special guest joining us. We have Senator Jon Husted joining us. We're talking about the Connect Act, which is to focus on helping youth in foster care from ages 14 to 21 develop meaningful connections with lifelong support networks and to help them plan for independence. First and foremost, Senator Jon Husted, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Great to join you. Thanks for having me on the show.
So you have a very personal connection to foster care. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I started out life in a foster home. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. My birth mother had 2 children already, had somehow lost her husband in connection with the Vietnam War, and became pregnant from another man, and was faced with a very difficult choice. And ultimately, she chose to have an adoption. So I went to a foster home for a few months. And then the greatest blessing that could have happened to me in life, I got adopted by my mom and dad, Jim and Judy Husted, who raised me on County Road J in rural Northwest Ohio in Williams County. And so I have a great story. I was blessed, but I know that not every child who enters the foster care system is as blessed as I was. And so I've tried to make it one of the pillars of my personal life and professional life, along with my wife, Tina, to try to help as many of those young people as we can.
So how did your past experiences being in foster care and being adopted shape this legislation?
Well, I've tried to pay attention to the system that exists, and I just feel sort of a moral obligation to try to help them. I was blessed, so I think that I have the opportunity to give back and try to help those young people. When I was lieutenant governor, or when I was Speaker of the House, we tried to make it easier for people to do adoptions in Ohio. We did tax credits to help make it more affordable for people to adopt. One of the things I did when I was lieutenant governor with Innovate Ohio is that we created this system. Think about this. We used to have 88 counties that had their own system for becoming a foster parent or adoption. We created a single system so that you fill out one form and you would be eligible in all 88 counties. And just a simple tool like that has helped reduce the number of young people who are waiting for foster care and also for adoptive situations. So we've used technology and innovation to try to be smarter about how we connect people to these services, both families that want to adopt and foster and then those children who are waiting. And then now my wife and I have really been focused on kids who are aging out of foster care because they are very, very vulnerable. And I'm sponsoring the Connect Act, which is designed to help young people from 14 to 21 put resources in to help them make meaningful connections with adults, because they have so much trouble doing that. I mean, put yourself in their situation that you have, maybe you've been in 6 different foster situations. You don't have adults in your life that you can trust. There's no real good mentor. You've been living sort of day to day, not knowing what your future holds. And then you're going to turn 18 or you're going to turn 21, whatever the situation might be. And then you're out there on your own. Not really having been prepared to navigate that. We're trying to help put resources in place to help them navigate that. Meaning, can we connect you to an education? Can we connect you to a job? Can we connect you to housing? Can we connect you to other forms of mentorship that help you get ahead? So that's what we're working on right now. It's so important because if you get off to, if you just put yourself in that position, you're 18 and you can either go and be homeless, without a job, without a path, which happens to many, many young people, or we can connect you to a job, we can connect you to some housing, we can show you a path to get ahead. All of those things are so critically important that we get it right.
And before we get to that point, that later on stage, looking at some statistics here from Pathway Caring for Children, there are more than 16,000 children in foster care just in your home state of Ohio. There are about 7,000 people registered as foster parent or licensed foster families in the state of Ohio. How do we increase that number? Does the Connect Act work at all to increase the process to become a licensed foster family to help bridge that gap between the number of children in the foster system and that number of foster families?
Well, it's certainly an important issue. That's why coming on your show and talking about it is important. Having powerful advocates like Melania Trump has become for youth and foster families and adoption and things of that nature. All of those things create awareness, because in this busy world that we have out there, sometimes people don't know that you can step in and become that foster parent, or if you're willing, maybe even make it something where it's easier, or where you could adopt. That's one of the things I would really focused on as lieutenant governor, is trying to expand that pool and make it easier. A lot of times you'll hear people say, well, hey, I would like to adopt, but they make it so hard. Or I would like to be a foster parent, but they make it so hard. I think eliminating the bureaucracy of doing that, while also ensuring that we have good, stable, individuals and homes to service foster environments is a really important thing. So we're trying to build that, but really the most important thing that we can do is to explain to people that it can be you, and then we make it easier for them to be able to do that.
And I know you're pulling from a lot of real life experience, from your own experience. What was one thing that Senator Husted really needed when you were transitioning from childhood into adulthood?
Well, we all need mentors. I know that. I was very blessed with a family where my mom gave us unconditional love. My dad had a great work ethic. He worked a lot of times 2 jobs to make sure that we had the things that we needed to have in life. And so I had great examples, good values, hard work, personal responsibility, all the things that prepared me. I had good coaches who helped me with my sports. I had teachers who cared about me. I had a church community that cared about me. I grew up in a small town where people cared about each other. And so those things mattered to me, and they've mattered to me throughout my whole life. I think every one of us has somebody in our lives, whether that's a spouse, a family member, a friend, a coworker, somebody who is there for us in time of need. That's what we all need. And if you grow up in a situation where first of all, you don't have a family to trust, the adults in your life really haven't been all that helpful to you, you could understand why there's a lack of trust and that there's a need for mentorship and support. We've been trying to create that environment in our church. We've been trying to do that through public services. This is what we all need. I think every one of us can attest to that. And so imagine that you grow up in a very unstable environment. You need it even more.
And you mentioned, having these kind of supports that shaped you when it comes to the folks who want to become licensed and some of the legislation around that in the process. In your eyes, who should be a foster parent? When it comes to the scale of person and the type of person, who should become a foster parent?
Well, I mean, if you want to be, it's got to be in your heart. You have to care about, if you care, and if you want to do the right thing by helping young people, then first of all, I think that's the number one thing, is that you've got to have almost a selflessness to you, where you say, hey, I want to make the life of one of these young people better. That may come from your faith tradition. That may come from that's how you are. You're a kind and gentle person, and you want to help, but you got to want to do it, because it's not easy. Understand you're a lot of times going to be helping children who've had a tough life, but I think you can get purpose and meaning in your own life when you do selfless things that help others. I think if that's how you're wired and you're doing it for the right reasons, you're the kind of person that would make a good foster parent. But I also want to say that you can mentor these children that we're talking about from 14 to 21 and not be their foster parent. There are many ways that you can, through working through social service agencies and not-for-profits, be a mentor to these individuals. If you're an employer, you can hire these individuals. If you're, if your church wants to take on a project, you can help with this. If you're Rotary Club, whatever your service organization is, everybody has an opportunity to impact children who are in this situation. And so it doesn't mean that you have to say, I'm going to, bringing someone into your home and making them part of your family is ultimate all in on trying to help with this. But there are many other ways that you can give of your time and treasure to help.
Okay. So this bill has bipartisan support. It's already passed the House. What comes next, and how optimistic are you that these reforms will go into law?
Well, I'm very optimistic. We have good bipartisan support in the Senate on this. This is an issue that there's a lot of agreement on. We just have to find the right vessel to get it across the line. But I'm confident that we will. And understand this will help, but there's so much more that needs to be done in every one of our communities, because this isn't we don't have a federal system. Federal resources can go out to the states and local communities to help, but ultimately, this is your community that takes care of it. It's the people within your community, it's the employers within your community, it's the social service agencies within your community, and it's you. It's every single one of us trying to do something to make the world a better place, and this is a good group of people that need our help. And when I always say this too, like with young people, just think of the impact that you have taking somebody who's aging out of foster care, and I think they're very likely to end up homeless. They're very likely to be without a job or an education that would lead to a good job. They're very likely to be involved in out of wedlock birth, and they're very likely to be involved with alcohol or drug abuse. Or you help them at that phase, you get them an education or a job skill, you hire them, you get them in stable housing, you provide mentorship, and then they begin to climb the mountain of life towards a hopeful future. Just think of the life trajectory you change by doing this. It's, I think, one of the most noble and long-term valuable things that we can do.
All right, Senator Jon Husted, thank you so much for joining us, talking about that piece of legislation. So once again, Senator Jon Husted. Also, it is important to note that Senator Jon Husted is up for re-election. We have offered time to his Democratic opponent, Sherrod Brown, to come on the show as well. But right now, we're going to be joined by Jay Fox from the Ohio News Network. We are talking about a number of funding cuts as well. And you just had a sit down with the president of MIT.
Indeed. I spoke with Dr. Sally Kornbluth about what's happening. Over the course of 2025 and into this year, the federal government has cut or frozen as much as $3.7 billion in active, previously approved research grants. Public institutions have borne the brunt of it, with $2.1 billion of those cuts coming from university research. The subject matter is very specific: climate change, public health advocacy, infectious disease, vaccine hesitancy, and anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay. And now I asked you this earlier, but how does this tie back to Ohio for our listeners, and why is this a concern?
So Ohio State University is the #1 R1 research university for the entire state of Ohio. And university leaders through the American Association of American Universities, I should say, including Ravi Belakonda, who is our president at OSU, have warned that these moves are heavily damaging the scientific pipeline. There have been lab closures, there have been layoffs, fewer researchers, and a new study of 1,600 U.S. scientists conducted by the scientific journal called Nature revealed that 75% of PhD students and almost 80% of postgraduate students surveyed were considering leaving the country to pursue research opportunities in Canada and Europe. Now, that pipeline, Bryn, refers to the students who will ultimately become the scientific researchers that address the subjects that we discussed, like disease and things like technical innovations.
And when you spoke with the president of MIT, Dr. Kornbluth, Sally Kornbluth, about this, when she talked about this, she had some pretty grave concerns over these losses.
She did. And what she said specifically, and you'll hear it in this clip, is that it doesn't just impact the Ivy League schools, it impacts schools specifically like Ohio State.
We're not going to see the risk tomorrow or next week or maybe even next year. What's at risk are the kind of cures and technological advances that we'll enjoy as we age, as our children get older, as their children's children get older. So it's really the future that's being mortgaged at this point. Basically, the pipeline now will create the cures, devices, advances of the future. And it's difficult to see that right now, but believe me, we will see it down the road if that pipeline runs dry. Ultimately, places like MIT are going to do less science. That will lead to fewer cures, et cetera. And that's not just MIT. That's our peers, places like the Ohio State. The new president there, Avi Velamkonda, a wonderful bioengineer. He gets this. It's going to be schools all over the country that are going to feel this. A decrease in science leading to a drying of the pipeline.
A drying of the pipeline, as she described it.
Right.
And Ohio State is already facing losses of $50 million or more a year, which means certain research stops, programs are discontinued. And those canceled projects include things like tracking vaccine hesitancy in rural Ohio communities, long-term effects of COVID-19, minority women's mental health, and youth suicide among LGBT youth. And also, the cool thing about Ohio State is that they've been able somehow to avoid the massive faculty layoffs that have plagued the Ivy League schools through private industrial-sponsored partnerships and diversified grants.
Go ahead.
So this is not a bipartisan issue, though.
No, well, it is. Mm-hmm. It is a partisan issue. Mm-hmm. It's a serious divide between Democrats and Republicans. Republicans want to demand ideological compliance with the administration. The Democrats warn that defunding these grants harms local economies and stops life-saving discoveries.
All right, Jay Fox from the Ohio News Network. Thanks so much for coming in. Certainly something to continue watching. Right now, another thing that we are actively watching right now is a news conference going on at the State House at the governor's office right now. That is not the governor. Obviously, that is one of his media people, but we will check in on that momentarily. Once again, we don't exactly know the full scope of that news conference. We'll be with that. He's expected to speak momentarily, but we'll bring that to you live. But we're going to take a quick break.
6:33 on your Tuesday morning. Joining us right now, Bruce Harkey, you are the president and CEO of the Franklin Park Conservatory. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. So we found out yesterday that the Franklin Park Conservatory has generated $225 million for our economy.
Tell us,
here. Yeah, in Central Ohio. Would you like to add to that, Colin?
Right. So I mean, it's a big number.
That's a huge number
for this, and this is all coming at the time that the conservatory is going through a massive renovation project that would hopefully boost those numbers. But talk to us a little about how we got to that number.
Yeah, it was really important for the conservatory as we embark on the visionary, big, bold idea for Central Ohio, the North Star Master Plan, to really get a handle on what the conservatory's economic impact is for this community and for the state of Ohio. And we worked with the Chamber of Commerce and spent about 6 months working on this project. And we've created almost 10 major capital projects since I joined the conservatory in 2007, culminating with the Scott's Miracle Grow Foundation Children's Garden in 2018. So measuring from 2018 forward, you really do see the impact of that investment that has been made with public and private partnerships.
All right, Bruce, I apologize. I'm going to have to cut you off really quick. Governor Mike DeWine just now taking that podium. We'll take you into that right now.
Member of the Judiciary Committee in the U.S. Senate, then as Ohio Attorney General, now as Governor. I've had ample reason to think about this issue over the last 50-plus years. During my time as an assistant prosecutor, and then as the elected county prosecuting attorney, I prosecuted no death penalty cases. For a significant part of my time in that office, Ohio's death penalty law had been declared unconstitutional. However, my time as a prosecutor was very impactful. It was my first opportunity to work with victims of horrific crimes such as rape and homicide, and to see firsthand how devastating these crimes are to the victims and to their families. In 1980, when I was elected to the Ohio State Senate, Ohio had no death penalty law. When I was appointed to the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, we quickly started working on a new death penalty law that we hoped would conform to U.S. Supreme Court decisions. I was a co-sponsor of Senate Bill 1, a bill to reinstitute Ohio's death penalty. As a member of the Judiciary Committee, I participated in the markup of the bill and the debate surrounding it. The State Senate passed the bill on June 30th, 1981, by a vote of 23-10. I voted in favor of it. It was then sent to the House, which passed it the next day by a vote of 71-28. Governor Rhodes signed it into law, and it took effect on October 19th, 1981. It was a bipartisan bill. At the time, the Republicans controlled the state Senate, Democrats controlled the state House of Representatives. It may be of interest that in the state Senate version of the capital punishment bill that we passed in 1981, the jury was given the option of choosing life without parole. The House version did not give the jury this option, and the House version ultimately prevailed. While a member of the United States House of Representatives, I worked on and voted for the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1988, which President Ronald Reagan signed into law. That bill expanded the number of crimes eligible for the federal death penalty. While a member of the United States Senate, I also worked on and voted for the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, which President Bill Clinton signed into law in 1996. Now, among other things, this law attempted to speed up the review of capital punishment cases in our federal courts, all in an effort to shorten the lengthy appeals process in these cases. Years later, as Ohio Attorney General, I vigorously carried out my legal obligation to defend our capital punishment laws and to litigate in court for the executions. Some examples include the following. First, getting Ohio's death penalty protocol reinstated by the Federal Court of Appeals. Getting Ohio's death penalty restarted after a prior moratorium. defending death penalty convictions in the United States Supreme Court and in the Ohio Supreme Court, and seeking and obtaining death penalty indictments and death sentences on multiple occasions by the Special Prosecution Section under my direction and authority as Ohio Attorney General. Further, as part of the Attorney General's standard practice, I talked with a number of victims' family members by phone prior to each execution. When I voted for the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1981, I believed that in some cases, capital punishment could serve as a deterrent to keep some people from killing. For me, it was the moral justification for having a death penalty. In judging whether capital punishment is a deterrent, two things are very important. Two words: certainty and swiftness. Certainty and swiftness. By certainty, I mean, what is the certainty that it will be carried out, that it will actually happen? How likely is it that a murderer will be indicted for a capital offense, convicted of the capital offense, and then actually executed? Swiftness. By swiftness, we mean how long does it actually take from sentencing to execution? It would seem that if the death penalty were an actual deterrent for some people, it would need to happen swiftly, quickly, and with certainty. However, statistically, the odds of the death penalty actually being carried out are very low. And if it is carried out, it is all but guaranteed that it will take a long, long time for that execution to happen. Let's examine the issue of swiftness and look at the data to see how long it is taking for executions to be carried out in the state of Ohio. Now, I think the best way to see how long it's taking is to look at the last 10 people to be executed in Ohio and see how long it took from the time of conviction to the time of execution. The elapsed time between sentencing and execution ranged from a low of 14 years to a high of 32 years. 14 to 32 is the range. For the last 10 people in Ohio who were sentenced to death and who were actually executed, the average, by that I mean the mean, the average elapsed time was 21 years. This statistic omits the people who died waiting to be executed. It also omits those whose cases were overturned by a court. Let's look at the numbers. Of the 337 individuals who received a death sentence since 1981, 56 have been executed. In that same time, 41 died of either natural causes or by suicide while on death row. And, according to the Ohio Attorney General's most recent annual death penalty report, since 1981, a total of 89 death sentences were removed based on, quote, judicial action, end of quote. In the Ohio Attorney General's 2024 annual report, he explains what he means by judicial action. He says that, and I quote, most were removed because of legal errors, such as ineffective assistance of counsel, Brady violations, juror errors.
And you were just listening to Governor Mike DeWine. He is addressing a group of press about capital punishment and the death penalty. He has never publicly spoken about it until today. Our Doug Petcash, he is there in the audience, and I'm sure they'll be taking questions soon, and he'll have a report coming up on 10 TV News at noon. But if you want to continue watching this, you can on our 10 TV app. So we're going to send things back to our guests that we have with us. Thank you so much for patiently waiting, Bruce.
Of course.
So we're talking about the Franklin Park Conservatory and just how much it's generating for Central Ohio. Why is this all happening now?
I think.
And if you can lean in a little closer to this.
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I think everyone knows how much Central Ohio is growing. I think there was a recent report that Columbus is one of the top 5 growing cities in the country and the top in the Midwest. And we've always felt at the conservatory that we should be building the conservatory for the future. And I think the alignment right now is really great. I was saying recently that back in 1895, when the John F. Wolfe Palm House was built, it wasn't named after John F. Wolfe back in 1895, obviously, but that was the City Beautiful movement, and was characterized by big, bold ideas as all these cities were growing. And I feel like Columbus and Central Ohio was in that moment again, where with all the major investments with corporations, that we as cultural assets need to continue growing in stride with the community to make sure that we're enhancing quality of life.
And when we're talking about jobs, right now you support 373 jobs.
Yes.
And you're projecting to top 900 by 2030.
That's
How do you
correct.
plan on doing that?
Well, the expansion with the North Star Master Plan is pretty significant. If you go to the conservatory's website, you can see over 15 inspirational projects, including the historic renovation of the Palm House and the Show House. But those jobs come from not only our staff. We're going to have 7 acres of amazing new world-class gardens, but also construction jobs and other jobs coming from visitors to the conservatory.
What else is a part of that big plan to turn the conservatory into a national destination, not just a destination within Ohio?
Well, I think starting with the Palm House, which is the heart and soul of the conservatory, along with the Show House, built in 1895, those are important architectural spaces here in the state of Ohio. There are only 6 left in the country. And one of the big differences, I think, between the Palm House here in Columbus and other places like New York and Chicago and San Francisco is that all of the space in front of those beautiful architectural gems are going to be immersed with new world-class gardens. And just to give you an example, one garden will be 3 acres and transform from season to season with different colors, and really focus on more sustainability to kind of educate the public about that. So I think that's one example. We have a Chihuly glass collection, and we've been working with the Chihuly studio in Seattle to talk about the future of that collection. We'd like to create our own version of Chihuly gardens and glass to really celebrate the Chihuly collection. Our commitment to world-class horticulture starts with the Palm House, with a new collection of understory palms and other tropical plants, many of which we acquired through Amazon for free, through a relationship with our tropical plant expert, Ron Galliardo, who worked there. So I think some really exciting things. We're trying to think big and bold, which I think is important in these transition times in Central Ohio.
Right. And when I took part in Hat Day, probably 2.5, 3 years ago now, there was a big movement that, because of the age of the Palm House, it's time for new glass to make it more efficient and more effective at keeping everything alive. And, the plan was, all of those plants in the Palm House were going to have to either be protected somehow or moved.
Yes.
It's a massive undertaking.
It is. Everyone loves the fiddly fig
Yes,
in the
it's
Palm House.
huge.
It's over 100 years old. And so that plant, along with one other palm that has kind of a C shape or U shaped trunk to it, could not be moved. All the other plants were moved to various places, some to our greenhouse, some returned to Mother Earth as compost because they were too tall to repurpose. And all the glass is pretty incredible. We're moving from the 1980s kind of squared glass appearance that was done in preparation for Ameriflora in 1992, and working with a company called Prospiat, which is one of the world's leaders in historic glass renovation, and returning to a curved Victorian glass that will be tinted gray. If you've been in the Palm House during the summer, it gets very hot in there. I can't tell you what the temperature will be, but there's a 1,000% improvement in ventilation with new venting systems and fans. So.
Yeah. So beyond the economic numbers and all the changes that you're making, I know you guys have made accessibility a top of mind. You've gone from about admission from 2% of visitors to 25% when it comes to expanded free and reduced pricing. How important is it to expand accessibility for visitors?
It is very important. I always tell the story of being a kid growing up in Detroit and going on a family vacation in our car with 6 of us and stopping at the School of Horticulture in Niagara Parks. And at 10 years old, probably, that was the moment that I realized I wanted to become a horticulturist. And so I feel I think it's very important to make sure that everyone in this community and visitors from out of the state have the opportunity to access nature and to find their place in their career in the future. And so the conservatory made a commitment when we opened the children's garden to make sure that every child in Central Ohio and City of Columbus and Franklin County had access to the children's garden. And yeah, it's been phenomenal, 2% to 25%. There's a significant cost that goes along with that. And so we're always looking for, corporate sponsorships. The cost is about $500,000 a year to welcome 25,000 visitors to the conservatory. But it's folks who have not been to the conservatory. So I think the challenge is how do we convert them to memberships and realize that the conservatory should be an indispensable part of their lives.
I'm just curious, how big are weddings and other events that you host at the conservatory a part of everything that you generate?
It is. So when I started the conservatory in 2007, our operating budget was 4%. And through the successful implementation of those 10 major capital projects, the Wells Barn, the community garden campus and such, we've grown our revenue to $17 million. So quadrupling our revenue. And at the same time, the weddings and the events and the growth in our admissions has taken our earned revenue from about 50% to 70%. And we really are looked at across the botanical garden industry as a leader in innovation. Many other gardens that were part of a wealthy family's estate, they have large endowments and they really don't have to do fundraising or earn revenue. So I think that is really one of the characteristics of the conservatory is this entrepreneurial spirit and coming up with new ideas, including events that will captivate the community and bring more guests to us.
Okay. Thank you so much
You're
for coming
welcome.
on, Bruce.
My pleasure.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we will be right back after this short break. Joining us, we have Patrick DeHaan with Gas Buddy, because we are once again talking about gas prices. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Big Picture, 9:52. Joining us right now, we have Patrick DeHaan. He is a petroleum analyst with Gas Buddy. Patrick, thank you again for joining us once again. After the news of the tentative peace deal that's supposed to be signed on Friday at the G7 summit with Iran and the U.S., I know you said in the past it's really hard to predict the market right now, a day or 2 days in advance, but what changes have you seen since the news of that peace deal has been out?
Well, we've seen oil prices continuing to move lower. We've seen also some concerning headlines about what may or may not happen, and we don't really know what might happen. For now, the signing ceremony is set for Friday. A lot can happen between now and then. So, while I'm cautiously optimistic that oil prices, which dropped yesterday, are continuing to drop today, that could lead to lower prices for now. I'm really hoping we can get to Friday and get this thing signed and get the strait reopened, because that certainly would mean lower gas prices for the remainder of summer. If something does happen, though, to unravel this deal in the backdrop, I'm also worried that oil inventories globally are declining. And U.S. data out yesterday from the government show that the U.S. Strategic Reserve yesterday fell to its lowest level since 1983. So if something does happen to this deal, I'm concerned that in the backdrop of the strait remaining closed, and if it does continue to remain closed, there's going to be more pressure building on prices to eventually slingshot again. So, hoping for the best, lower gas prices for now. But if things go south, we still could very quickly see gas prices going back up for the rest of the summer.
Okay, and realistically, let's say the Strait of Hormuz reopens on Saturday after this is maybe signed on Friday. How soon do you think gas prices would go back to pre-war levels?
Oh, well, that'll take quite some time. As I mentioned, the U.S. Strategic Reserve and global inventories have declined. We've missed out on 1.5 billion barrels of oil over the last 115 days since the U.S. attacked Iran and Iran closed the strait. So, a billion and a half. A billion and a half barrels is going to take a long period of time to resupply from. So, pre-war prices, if we're extremely lucky, maybe extremely late this year, like November, December. I also could see us not returning to pre-war prices until early or even late 2027. It's really going to be contingent on to what degree the strait reopens. There's been some murmurs that potentially tolls may happen after 60 days. So there's a lot of potential here, but I would say that for pre-war prices, it's probably going to take at best several months, if not beyond.
All right, Patrick DeHaan with Gas Buddy, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. We'll check back
Thank
in with
you.
you probably at a later date, because this is a never-ending conversation.
yes.
And also the weather, never-ending conversation. Joining us right now, Justin Gertz. We have an alert day we've issued for Wednesday. Why is that? What are we expecting?
Yeah, we're looking at Wednesday overnight into early on Thursday, so it's an overnight event. There could be some scattered showers and storms Wednesday evening. Those don't look like a big deal. It's going to be the midnight to 5 a.m. Wednesday overnight, early Thursday time frame. There'll be a line of thunderstorms that comes in from the west during that time. Primary threat's going to be gusty winds, maybe some heavy rain. Secondary threats, hail, and maybe a couple of brief spin-up tornadoes within that line of storms. So main threat, again, is going to be those gusty winds. So with it being an overnight event, want people to have different ways of getting weather information, just because got to have something to wake you up in case you need to go to your safe spot. So.
Lock down that patio furniture.
Yeah, going to be probably quite windy at times with that line of storms. At the very least, it's going to wake people up. They're going to be strong as they come through.
And like we kind of talked about yesterday, I feel like so many other parts of the Midwest have been getting severe weather, and we haven't really experienced too much of it yet.
Yeah, we've
so
had.
could this be the first really, big storm with strong winds that we could experience for the season?
We'll have to see how things evolve, just because the overnight hours aren't typically a very favorable time, just because you don't have all that energy around as much. But there's going to be so much wind aloft that it's going to keep those storms energized as they come through, essentially. This is actually going to be a batch of thunderstorms that originates in Illinois and similar areas that's probably going to be producing some very significant severe weather. Could be some strong tornadoes in Illinois later on tomorrow afternoon, evening. We're not looking at that type of weather, but it's that same complex of storms that comes east. So because it's going to be pretty high end when it starts, it's going to take some time for it to lose its oomph as it rolls east. So again, looks like midnight to 5 a.m. is the time frame for central Ohio. Columbus area probably centered around 2 a.m. the way it's looking right now. Again, that's Wednesday overnight, early Thursday.
And a lot of people are obviously in bed around that time. So what do you recommend they do? Have their phones on, have their push alerts on? What do you recommend?
Exactly. So make sure that you have, on your phone, make sure you have those weather alerts that'll come through. And there are certain levels of alerts, like tornado warning, that will come through, but make sure that you actually have those enabled. If you have a weather radio, have that on, plugged in, make sure the batteries are on in there. That'll be something that'll definitely wake you up. I've been woken up by weather radios before. They're pretty noisy. If the outdoor warning sirens were to go off for, any sort of situation, you can't count on those to wake you up, because they are meant to alert people who are outdoors. And hopefully people at 2 o'clock in the morning aren't really spending a lot of time outside. Again, not to say that there's going to be tornado activity. It may be just strong winds. But as we've seen around here, you get 60, 70 mile an hour winds, that's still going to cause damage.
And it can change in a second, you know?
Very much so. It'll come in pretty hard, pretty fast when it does so.
Okay.
Right.
Justin.
And are we looking at, kind of looking at some of the stuff from, Meredith's hour by hour radar, that this seems to, it's not going to be like line after line after line. It's kind of just one big chunk.
Exactly. That's what it looks like. That's fairly typical for these cold fronts, is that it's lined up right along that thing. So as it comes through, it'll come through, and then once it's passed, it's passed. I mean, there would be some rain, thunder, things like that, but as far as the wind part of it, that's on the leading edge, and once that gets through, that threat goes away.
I keep thinking about the images that we showed this morning of the Ferris wheel